And over to you, Brother Muzzammil.
Jazakallah khair. I appreciate you hosting not just me, but the issue of Kashmir at such short notice, especially in the backdrop of what's recently been happening. So I appreciate that. It's a lot of people are speaking about what's happening right now in the context of India and Pakistan, and it seems that the voices of Kashmir, or at least the narrative of Kashmir, is starting to be diluted. So it's important that, and I'm happy that you've platformed us and allowing us to at least get the narrative out there and correct the optics, as so to speak. So I appreciate that.
Jazakallah. So just to understand the topic, so Hindutva, Zionist, Kashmir, let's define these terms first, or let's look into some history of it. What is a Hindutva?
So Hindutva, the root of Hindutva, for many people who may not know this, let's go back a couple of years when the Leicester riots happened. At the time, I was hoping that people would catch on to the idea that what radical Hindutva is. Instead, it seemed to be more about an opportunity to have a fight instead of understanding what the fight is about. When we talk about Hindutva, we talk about at least I started talking about Hindutva in the context of the Nazis, because the basic principles of Hindutva emanates and stems from Nazi Germany. If you look at the Hindutva salute, the RSS is the parent organization. It's the ultimate organization of Hindutva. The RSS uniform, the RSS salute, the RSS ideology is identical to Nazis. However, in the modern age, Hindutva models itself over Zionism, the Israeli Zionism as it stands. Because once fascism was broken, in Germany, people thought that fascism wouldn't reappear. And if you think that it's only appeared in the form of Zionism in the Middle East, you need to look a little bit further towards the East and understand what's happening there. And it's been happening since the 20s. That vision that the Hindus had before the partition of the subcontinent, is being implemented now. It's being implemented. Obviously, it's been maturing over so many years, but now the BJP, who are in power, is their parent organization, the RSS. Modi, Yogi Adityanath, Amit Shah, Ajit Doval, Jay Shankar, all of these people are products of the RSS, the parent organization of BJP, which advocates for an Akhand Bharat. Akhand Bharat means a pan-Hindu nation that stretches beyond their own borders, stretches beyond the sovereign borders of India. It goes beyond Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. It goes beyond Pakistan and Afghanistan. It goes beyond Iran, all the way up to Saudi Arabia. Brother, they call the holy Kaaba in Mecca as Makeshwar Mahadev temple.
Yeah, so they accused the black stone being a shivling or something like that as well, right?
Exactly. I mean, even they can't tolerate Muslims. If you think that the Zionists can't tolerate Muslims, look at what's happening to the Muslims inside India. Of course, Kashmir is a big proponent of that, and I am from Kashmir, so I'm mostly going to be speaking about that. But I'm not going to ignore the plight of the Muslims inside India. If you look at the Qutb Minar, a very famous landmark, they want to call it the Vishnu Stamb temple. And of course, let's not forget the Babri Masjid, which is now the Ram Mandir, that they demolished. So it is on the ashes of Muslims that they're building their empire, that they're expanding their empire. And this Akhand Bharat, this pan-Hindu nation, is not a joke. If you consider that Zionism, the way that they see, and Muslims, we don't ignore the language that is being used by Zionists. We don't ignore the maps that they're showing that Jordan, parts of Jordan belong to them, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, and all these. Why do we ignore what Hindutva wants to do and anticipates in doing? Understand that Hindutva and Zionism are identical. And I argue that Hindutva succeeds in places where Zionism has failed. Anything that Zionists do, the world knows about it. And I don't mean about international audiences, international governments and NGOs and human rights organizations. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about me. We know about it. We debunk their lies within minutes of them publishing it. Whereas when Indians do it, the Hindutva Brigade do it, the BJP, the RSS do it, and their affiliates do it, of which there are more than 600, especially in the West as well. When they do it, nobody seems to know, nobody seems to understand. Even today, people see India in the prism of Gandhi and Bollywood and yoga. And the funny thing is, the BJP have co-opted Gandhi because they understand the power that the Gandhi imagery wields. They co-opted him, even though the BJP were the ones that assassinated Gandhi. So you can understand the way that they play things. There's a phrase in the Asian language, the Urdu Hindi language, "Hati ke dant dikhane ke liye alag aur khane ke liye alag." What they show is not what they are. and what they are before they wouldn't show. But now, since October 7th, they have been more than happy to show exactly what they are and who they are. Let me tell you that in the global south, after the partition, and once Israel started creating its own settlements and expelling the Palestinians, in the global south, India was the first country to recognize Palestine. While at the same time they were doing backdoor dealings with the Israelis and asking Israel to supply them with weapons to fight China, while openly supporting Palestine. The hypocrisy, the duplicity of Hindutva is not new, it's old. Now they feel they can remove that mask. They don't, and it's not like we're the ones that have had some kind of success. It's the Palestinians, the Palestinian cause has caused ramifications internationally, globally, to the extent that the right-wing fascist movements internationally all over the world, they've been exposed completely. And Indians are no less, the BJP is no less. They have been completely exposed in their ideology, in their activity against Muslims, not just inside Kashmir, but in India as well.
Ustad, India is a big place, 1.8 billion people. Historically, we've had, we've hosted all sorts of religions, from Buddhism to Hinduism to Muslims coming to India from, the time of Qasim, is it Muhammad bin Qasim that came? And then Muslims had, power over India at time, Mughals and different dynasties, Delhi Sultanate. Where did it all go wrong for Hindus and for them to develop this kind of ideology where they felt isolated or felt the need of having a Hindu state? Was it prior to British Raj or post-British Raj, or when is the inception of this Hindutva ideology?
Thousands and thousands of years. They're the ones that, it's not me saying, I'm not making this up, that suddenly happened in the 20s. In the 20s, they formulated the plan because they had the power. Right. They were organizing against the British Raj, and they knew that, at some point we can resist and we can create an ethno-state. But ideologically, the way they see, and of course, India, as we see it today, its borders have expanded and contracted many, many times over the last 1,000 years. But in their own words, in Hindutva's own words, they believe that this is a pure-blooded Aryan race. They believe that this is the home of the Hindus. They call it Hindustan. They call it Bharat. They don't want to be called India anymore because India is a colonial term, according to them, whatever it may be. But it's their language. So where the idea came from, whether we agree with it or not, they believe in their own history, which we call mythology. And they believe that, this area is thousands and thousands of years old. Human civilization was born from here. All the gods were born from here. All religions were born from here, negating other people's history, culture, ethnicities, religion, and ideologies. They believe everything started with them. I mean, the arrogance of it, the sheer arrogance of it. So it's not about the 20s. It's not about fascist Germany. It's not about the Zionists. Their ideology, in fact, I would say that Zionism and Nazism is predated by Hindutva, the ideology of Hindutva. The only difference is that they've been able to emulate, or rather implement it, more recently. More recently means over the last 100 years. But look at how successfully they've implemented it. That's the strange thing. Until 1992, the BJP only had 2 members of parliament in the Indian parliament. Only 2. Today, the country belongs to them. The judiciary belongs to them. The media belongs to them. The public belongs to them. The financial institutions belong to them. Public policy belongs to them. Recently, Jay Shankar, who's the Minister of External Affairs, he was questioned in Washington, D.C., I think it was Washington, D.C., where a journalist asked him, why hasn't India sanctioned the crude oil of the Russians in the context of the Russian and Ukrainian war? You know what he said? That's a European problem. That's not our problem. Don't impose your problems on us. That is the power that India wields today. Just a few years ago, that was unheard of. India was the typical bow your head, sycophantic type of country. And in fact, I think it may have been one of the American presidents or the British prime ministers that said, if you want, the one good thing about the Indians, they have many, many bad qualities, but the one good thing about the Indians is they know how to butter you up very, very well. That was what India was known to be. And now they're the ones calling the shots. The franchise of the war on terror that happened post 9/11 was outsourced to India. They became subservient to the West by choice to continue that war against terror, against Islam, basically. But it's come to a point now that they no longer own the franchise that's in the subcontinent. They own the rights to it. They're the ones calling the shots. They're the ones dictating the terms. They're the ones sending supplies and weapons and doing military deals with Israel. India is the largest weapons importer of Israel in the world. They have the closest. If you look at the relationship between Netanyahu and Modi, it is. I've never seen such a bromance in all my years between politicians. The way they hold hands on the beach. So I'm not joking. You look at those photos. They hold hands on the beach. I mean, regardless of how homosexual that is, I don't care about that. But you can see the relationship that they're trying to impose upon the world. They want to showcase that this is what the relationship we have. Why are Muslims not recognizing this? Why are not Muslims seeing that it isn't America-Israel relationship that's the danger? It's the Israeli-Hindutva, it's the Zionist-Hindutva relationship that is the danger. If you think that the Zionists are coming after Al-Aqsa and they basically are controlling it, Hindutva are no less. They're destroying the masjids. They're in Kashmir, they're turning those masjids into mandirs. In many places, they've stopped allowing the adhan to be played on loudspeaker, if not turning the volume down. The imams that were leading the prayers in the masjids during Ramadan, Taraweeh, they were kidnapped just before the Isha prayers. The imposition of new form of Islam, the Islam that Sheikh Modi and Ustad Doval want to impose upon Muslims in Kashmir is now being implemented. And of course, the ramifications of that goes to mainland India. I say most of this started in Kashmir simply because we've experienced it. And then it was like Kashmir was a laboratory experiment. And then those trials were then exported to mainland India. And we saw that happening in 2019, the uprising of the Muslims, slowly, especially the younger generation. I know I keep on emphasizing this, but there is no difference between fascist India and what the Zionists are doing. All three, the Nazis, the Zionists and Hindutva, all are cut from the same cloth with the same ideology. They may have rebranded themselves because of their ethnicities and their locations, but they all believe in exactly the same thing. They are a superior race and everybody else are subhumans.
Okay, so in terms of just the little summary that we've had of Hindutva, it seems more like a political rather than a religious issue here, or is Hinduism, because it's quite a vast religion, so is Judaism. So as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, like there's a differentiation between Zionism and Judaism. Is there a differentiation between Hinduism and Hindutva?
Zionism is a political form of Judaism. I mean, let's accept it. Judaism may be a religion that we may not have necessarily a problem with. I mean, we're allowed to eat from the meat that is being slaughtered of the Jews. We have no problem with that. But Zionism is a political form of Judaism. In the same way, Hindutva is a radical Hinduism. Hindus who want to impose their version of what life should be or what religion is upon everybody else. I don't have a problem with Hindus per se. If you want to practice your religion the way you want to practice it, I have nothing to do with that. In fact, I won't even mock the fact that you drink cow urine and bathe in cow dung. I won't mock it. I don't have to respect it, but I won't even comment on it. But then don't impose that on me. The moment you impose that on me, that is Hindutva. The moment that you say that I am subhuman, the same way that the Zionists call everybody else Gentiles or whatever it is, and they call everybody else, the Hindutva brigade, call everybody else as subhumans, treating people as subhumans, creating concentration camps in Assam, establishing the CAA and NRC bills, the Citizens Amendmentship Act and the National Register of Citizens, essentially classifying anybody that isn't a particular caste of Hindu as second-class citizens, then, of course, there is a difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. But then in the same way that the West says that Muslims need to do more about radical Islam, I would say that the Hindus have to do exactly the same thing. They need to counteract this Hindutva. It's their responsibility. And if they don't fix it now, somebody else will.
So currently, as we stand, India is quote-unquote a secular country. Is that a fair statement to make now?
Quote unquote is a fair statement to make, but the rest of it, it isn't secular. In fact, if you look at the rampant noise that is being made on the news media nowadays, especially after what happened 3 days ago in Kashmir, they're saying that their constitution should eliminate the word secular. But the funny thing is that regardless of what the constitution says and what the law says, the government does what it wants. In Kashmir, after the abrogation of Article 317.35A in 2019, which essentially absorbed Kashmir into mainland India, ending the fact that it was a disputed territory. They had to meddle with our constitution and then their constitution. Constitutional amendments should take time. You're supposed to consult the public. You're supposed to consult the judiciary. India just did whatever it wanted. So secularism is not a real thing in India. They use that as a crutch to bang over the heads of other people that claim that India is violent against its minorities. They say, we're a secular country, we're elected. But then at the same time, let me remind you, the Nazis were also elected to power in the same way that the BJP is also elected to power. So secularism is just a term that is being bandied about. It's lost all its meaning, in India at least.
Do you think they have major support in India in comparison to a few years ago, and they have more support now than ever before because of, you know, things like Bollywood and constant agenda being pushed against Muslims and how Muslims are portrayed and what a common Hindu may believe about Muslim may be perhaps very negative? Do you think that is an increase in India right now, and that's what's, you know, adding to the whole situation?
Radicalization has been, let me ask you this, when Trump came into power and then suddenly you saw the right wing, the first time he came into power, you suddenly saw all of these right wing people come out. Even during the times of George Bush, people weren't like that. Now, the real question is, were people always like that, or did Trump make them into that? Did he develop? I mean, I can't imagine Trump is some kind of messiah that he suddenly converted everybody into becoming extreme right-wingers. It means that that sentiment was in the underbelly of society and they needed a leader and an opportunity to express themselves the way that they did. In the same way, this Hindutva ideology has been in the underbelly of society for so long that when Modi came into power, it was an opportune moment for them to become as radical as they wanted. The lynchings that they do on Muslims on the suspicion of carrying beef, not even slaughtering, just carrying beef, despite India being the #1 beef exporter in the world, and most of those production companies are all Hindus anyway. That's ironic. But despite all of that, in the underbelly of society, it was always there. BJP have previously been in power, but they didn't have a Modi-like figure. The same way that the Republican Party didn't have Donald Trump all of those years. They had people like George Bush and George Bush Sr. and all those other people. It took Trump for the underbelly of society to come out and be free and to express themselves freely as the right wing. In the same way, Modi, even if Modi goes, the opposition party are no less than the party in power at the moment. And more importantly, if Modi goes, there is a whole line of people much worse than Modi. Yogi Adityanath, Pragya Thakur, who has no relation to me, by the way, and a long line of BJP leaders that are much worse than Modi. If you look at what's happening in UP, Uttar Pradesh, under Yogi Adityanath, it's unprecedented, the kind of repression the minorities are going through. So when you ask that has it become worse, yes, absolutely, it's become worse, but it was always there. That sentiment, that ideology of a Hindu nation. Look, which nation doesn't want to have a supremacy? Supremacy isn't always a bad thing. But when you take it to the level that the Zionists have or the Hindutva have, that's a problem. We also believe in Islamic supremacy, but we don't want to impose that on other people. We don't want to create ghettos for other people. We don't want to create ghettos for Hindus and Jews and Christians. We live side by side. Palestine has been, before the Zionism, or rather the Israel attempted to create itself, before that, Jews and Muslims lived happily. In Kashmir, it was considered, when the World League was, before the United Nations, it was the World League, they said, if you want to look at the epitome of communal harmony, look towards Kashmir, because that's where Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists and Christians lived side by side in harmony. There was no problem. But it's this underbelly of society. The opportunity has arisen and people are taking it. People are taking that opportunity to express themselves as in the worst possible way.
Ustad, don't you think these criticisms of Hindus or Zionism and why are they the way they are? Where does this? You said they think they're superior than everyone else. Is that something deeply within their religion that tells them that you're better than so and so? I guess in Judaism, a Jew is better than a goy, which is a goyim, which is a Gentile, like you said earlier. But in Hinduism, is there a concept that exists that says we are superior race from this particular? Because India is such a diverse ethnic land. I mean, you've got the Dravidians and the Aryans. The Dravidian Hinduism is so much more different which is South Indian Hinduism, is so much more different to North Indian Hinduism. The Bengal Hinduism is so much more different to the Gujarati Hinduism. I mean, there's no uniform Hinduism. So where does the identity form of a unified Hindus? And even the word Hindu is not even a Sanskrit term. It's given by the Persians to
Hind,
the people
the
live in
area of
India.
Hind, yeah.
So the irony is they want to move away from India and call themselves Bharat, but not move away from Hindutva, which the root word is Hindu, which is from the Persians. So what's going on here? So very confusing for a lay Muslim man or even a lay Hindu to understand these things, what's happening.
So let's break it down. So first, let's look at the different various versions of Hinduism. So you say that, you know, where does it stem from? There are 4 levels of being a Hindu. Brahmin is the top. It doesn't matter what the other 3 are because they're not relevant to the Brahmins. Brahmins are the ones that are in control of India. It's like it's a class. It's a class. I guess if you're from the subcontinent, you'll understand this in the context of caste system. In the same way, they have a caste system within their own ranks as well. And only the top, of course, the top 2, the top 3 are the most important ones because they're the ones that are considered to be supremely more, they're considered to be better. Then you have the lowest rung, which is the Dalits, which are untouchables. But as it stands today, even the Brahmin, within Brahminism, there are also levels of Brahminism as well. Kashmiri Pandits are considered to be the top level of Brahmins. It becomes a little bit complicated in that sense. But then you have the number of the 300 million gods that they have.
Something like that.
Whose god is superior to whom? That's also a problem. In the south, the Dravidian Hinduism is very different to the northern Indians. There's people in the south, regardless of whether they're Hindus or Muslims, but in the south, they don't identify the same way as the people in the north, not just because of religion, but because of culture. You know, like you said, India is massive in its size as well as population. It's impossible for everybody to be the same. So in that way, there is so many fault lines within India itself. But the BJP, or rather the RSS, have managed to unify the Hindus under one ideology, which is creating a Hindu state. And they say this, that if the Zionists can do it, why can't we? They want to create their ethno-supremacist state. They need a land for the Hindus because they claim that they don't have one. And therefore, this has to be the land for the Hindus. And everybody else are invaders, irrespective of, they call me an invader and my last name is Thakur. I mean, you can't win with their logic. You cannot debate Hindutva with logic because they bring in mythology and history that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world except for them, and you're going to lose eventually.
So let me ask this, right? My name is Sunil Kumar. I became Muslim 10, 13 years ago. Am I now an invader or am I still a Hindu or an Indian?
They'll say that you're a Gadar, you're a traitor. Okay. And that, but you're still, they'll say that, you see, there's another concept in I don't want to say Hinduism, but in Hindutva, Garwapsi, bringing back people towards Hinduism. They say that all Muslims are converted Muslims. They've converted from Hinduism. Garwapsi means to bring them back to Hinduism. They started with our sisters. They started by the way they say the claim that Muslims were doing love jihad. They started this Garwapsi with our Muslim sisters. By enticing them, by trapping them, by marrying them, by creating haram relationships with them. That's the way that they've started. So they believe that all Muslims should convert back to Hinduism because they believe all Muslims were Hindu at one point in time. But the sad thing, the unfortunate thing is that they aren't, the war that they've started isn't a traditional war. It isn't even a gentleman's war. It is the worst way that they are starting this war, which is starting with young, impressionable girls, Muslim girls, and the way that they try to kidnap them, rape them, commit heinous acts upon them. And then, I don't even want to get into that, but that's the way that they've, the things that they believe in, that anybody that is a Muslim is either an invader, or rather a offspring of an invader, or they're converted, and we need to convert them back. I'd really like them to try to convert this Thakur at least.
Thakur. So in terms of, let's say, your personal heritage, is it, is it known where you like Hindu, because you're from Kashmir? So from what I understand, Kashmir at one point, maybe before 14th or 5th or 13th century, was predominantly Hindu or Buddhist. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And after that 500 years of Islamic Muslim rule, right. So in regards to what was 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, what I am today is what matters. If my ancestors were Hindu, alhamdulillah, somebody within my lineage had the aql, had the wisdom to realize that what Sheikh Hamdani, who was the person that brought Islam to Kashmir, we converted that way. Obviously, my history, the lineage is different. The reason why we're Thakurs is for land reasons, not necessarily for religious reasons, although there is something in there as well. But who cares? You're Kumar, I'm Thakur, and yet we're both Muslim. We both pray 5 times a day, and there's nothing that a Hindu or somebody from India or Hindutvawadi can do to change that.
So let's try to understand their criticism against us. What do you know about their criticism against Muslims, and what's their beef with us?
Beef. That's one of them. Look, they believe the same thing that the West believes in Muslims as well, that we can't assimilate, that we are radical, we are terrorism. Where does that stem from? It goes, I guess there is some eschatology that's necessary to be studied as well. The way that even on some level, I believe that the Christians and the Jews believe that Islam is a threat to their way of life, because Islam is the true way of life. And the way that they've created their societies based on riba, based on secularism, based on, non-man-made laws, they feel that Muslims can't compromise, aren't compromising, and therefore they are a threat to us. Christians, there's even a debate, astaghfirullah, but there is a debate that should we continue to perceive Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, as a straight man? I don't even want to use the term, but they want to prescribe him towards. They say, no, he was the other. He used to swing the other way. My God, and Christians aren't arguing back against that. It's the Muslims that are taking a stand. And there are now other Christians, if you look at particularly the Tommy Robinson crew, or people that used to be affiliated with Tommy Robinson, they are now at least appreciating Muslims for taking a stand against the radicalization against our children when it comes to certain subjects, or against Christianity, the way that we stand up for Maryam alayhi salam, or Isa alayhi salam, and all of these principles that Islam stands on, and in fact a lot of these laws stem from, is morality. And I can't say de-Islamization, because it's not de-Islamization, but the way that they're going away from the basis of their principles and morality and ethics and religion, that's what's a threat. That's what they perceive as a threat, that Muslims aren't compromising. And in the same way, Hinduism or Hindutva also has this problem with Muslims, that these people aren't compromising. I mean, yes, for the last 50, 60 years, the Muslims that were left behind after the partition, they had to be more loyal than the king. So what we call them Ganga Jamni Muslims, people that used to pray 5 times a day and also wear the tikka on their forehead at the same time. They used to celebrate Eid and Holi at the same time, which is forbidden. Those are the newer generation are saying, no, we want to stick to our principles. We're Muslims. We should be proud Muslims, irrespective of how much persecution that we may face. We have to stick to our principles. This is the type of Muslim that Hindutva or the BJP or the RSS have a problem with. Principled Muslims. So that's where this all goes back to, that Muslims will not assimilate into Hindutva or Hindu society. We want to maintain our own heritage, our own principles, and our own morality, which is, of course, according to Quran and Sunnah.
Since we're comparing different of strands in extremes like Nazis and Zionists and Hindutva, to understand like Zionist criticism or Nazi criticism at that time about Jews, were, they're controlling the banking system, they're doing this to our people, they're controlling Germany, hence now we're going to persecute them. And maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't true. I'm not exactly quite sure. Then the Zionist criticism is, we just want a little Jewish state. What's the problem? You've got such a big land, you can go anywhere, we can have this. Is there such a problem? Now the Hindu narrative is that you've oppressed us for so many years, you've done this and you've done that. In Kashmir, you've kicked out Pandits in the 1990s. How do we now, as Muslims, how do we counter sort of those arguments? Like when they criticize us, and maybe as Muslims, or we're not perfect. Muslims are not perfect. Islam is. Muslims make mistakes, right? What mistakes have we done that made them sort of think we're barbaric or we are a threat to their way of life?
We didn't do anything, but they have a problem with it. Is, you see, we have something called Iman, right? Tawakkul. We have a belief system, a belief structure. And sometimes I think Muslims don't understand that other religions also have the same thing. It's different. The fact that we believe that we are on the haqq, we are right, Allah is on our side. They also have that belief. We believe that it's wrong, but they, intrinsically, in their blood, in their DNA, to their core, in every atom, in every fiber of their being, they believe they're right. And that's where it becomes a problem, that the extremist elements within them do not want to accommodate anybody else. When you talk about what the Nazis believe and what Zionism believe, the funny thing is that what you've described is exactly what Hindutva believes. They believe that Muslims have been oppressive. You know, whatever happened 500 years ago, they're still harping on about that. 500 years ago. Let's go a little bit. Then why can't I talk about what happened 70 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago? History doesn't start at the time when the oppressor decides it does. That's not how it works. But yet, you know, might is right, and that's when they make that decision, that's what it is. The reality is that India want to create a land, an ethno-supremacist land for Hindus, because they say they don't have one, the same way that Israel. They also say that Muslims have oppressed us for so many years, and therefore we need to eradicate and eliminate them, irrespective that those Muslims are no longer alive. That's exactly what the Nazis said as well. So when I say that Hindutva takes inspiration from both these models, it is there, out on display. Now the question is, what are Muslims going to do about that? What is our answer to that? It doesn't matter what their argument is. What matters is, how are we going to respond? Are we going to continue allowing Muslims being eliminated in that part of the world? Let's also remember that there are hadiths that, you know, if you read a little bit about the end of times, Kashmir is important. Ghazwa-e-Hind is important, irregardless of whether you support it or not. I mean, this isn't the question. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about if we're Muslims and we believe in what the hadiths predict or foretell, we know what's going to happen. We know the importance of that part of the world. We know the importance of Palestine and that part of the world. Why are we making a distinction? Because both of them are important. Because once the conquest of Hind happens, the people that will conquer it, when they return to Syria, they will meet the Mahdi on the way. So there is something happening there that Muslims are not, either they don't know about or they're ignoring. If they're ignoring, this is a problem. If they don't know about it, this is our collective problem that we need to educate them and explain to them that the importance of that part of the world.
Ustad, speaking about Ghazwa-e-Hind, what does that even mean? What is Ghazwa-e-Hind?
The conquest of Hind, that territory. Now,
Did
some
that
people
already
argue,
happen in Muhammad bin Qasim's time?
people claim that, but then you have to read other parts after that. That after that, those people that will return, on their way, they will be greeted, or they will meet, or they will see, or they will know about that the Mahdi has come. Mahdi did not come at that time, so we're still waiting.
Eschatological point of view, we can see things being driven in that particular direction. So things are happening in India.
Even the Jewish people, whether they're Zionists or not, even the Jews recognize whatever is happening in Palestine is ushering in the end of days. If you look at those secret meetings and recordings that Netanyahu had with those priests and stuff, they were saying, you know, this is the right time. You need to usher in the Messiah and all this. They believe in exactly the same thing. Obviously, their belief structure is a little bit different to ours, but they believe in it. So that's the relevance to them in that part of the world. But for Muslims, it isn't just about that part. It's every part. It's not even just Kashmir or the Muslims in the subcontinent. It's every part of that. So we really need to focus about Muslims everywhere.
So we know the oppression that our Palestinian brothers are, going through right now from under the Zionist regime. But I think we're not aware of what's happening to the Indian Muslim. Is Kashmir like the Gaza of India?
No, because let's make this distinction very, very clear that Kashmir is not part of India. Kashmir is a disputed territory. Kashmir was not a part of India, is not a part of India, and will not be a part of India, the way that I see it. So we must make a very distinct difference between the Muslims of Kashmir and the Muslims of India. The Muslims of India have suffered in a different way. Their demands are different to what the Muslims of Kashmir. Kashmir wants the right to self-determination. We want to decide the way that we want to live our lives, whether we want to be a part of India or not. The Muslims inside India, until recently, I can't talk about every single India, but the way that it's been presented, majority of Indians want to live in harmony. They want to live successfully. They don't want these draconian laws being imposed upon them by the BJP. They still believe in being Indians, Indian Muslims. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that's what their belief structure is. Whereas Kashmiris, we've never identified as Indians. So we must make that distinction clear.
Do you identify as Pakistani, or you have your own? So would you rather? So from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm an Indian Muslim or Muslim Indian. For me, when I understand someone from Kashmir, they're either part of Azad Kashmir, Kotli, Mirpur, that area, or you're part of Jammu Kashmir, and there is some part which is Pakistani Kashmir, maybe Gilgit and Baltistan, I think. Right? So all that, this is all Kashmir. So now, as a Kashmiri, do you incline towards being Pakistani or Indian, or even like an independence? Like, that we have the issue of Khalistan in Punjab, right? They don't want to be a part of India or Pakistan. They want to have their own independent country, Palestine. Or you have the Baluchis on the other side in Baluchistan in Pakistan. They don't want to be Pakistani. They want to be Baluchis. They have their own culture, language, whatever. Is that the same sort of scenario here for Kashmir?
The most important thing to understand in this context is, what is it that Kashmiris are fighting for? We're fighting to preserve our identity. What is that identity? The Muslim identity. Because the war on us is because of our Muslim identity. It doesn't matter that we're Kashmiri or not. We could be called, I don't know, we could be called aliens for all I care. But the fact that we are Muslims living in that land, that is what the war is on. That franchise that I was telling you about post 9/11, that was taken out all across the world, the war against so-called terrorism, which is against the war on Islam, it has become now more and more apparent that that is what India have been doing over the last 70 or nearly 80 years. What Kashmiris want is to be able to pray 5 times a day in the masjid. We want to be able to wear the hijab. We want to be able to go to school and recite the kalima. We want to be able to do the things that any Muslim does. So when we ask that, do you want to be a part of India, Pakistan, independent? That all of that, to me personally, and most Kashmiris, that is an irrelevant question. I say this in good faith, because that isn't what the problem is. The war isn't because a Kashmiri wants to be part of Pakistan or a Kashmiri wants to be independent. The war is what India has imposed upon us, the war against Islam.
Brother Muzzammil, so are you saying that the Indian government or the current government or the people around you, they stop Muslims in Kashmir from praying 5 times a day, wearing their hijab, or practicing their religion?
If you look at some of the news reports that happened after 2019, there was a ban on the traditional Kashmiri clothes. Now that traditional, especially for women, it is a long cloak. It is much more than an abaya. It is much thicker than an abaya. It is much more, it may be cultural for us, but it's also very, very, it's honorable for women to wear it. They banned that. The hijab that was in government offices, they said you need to start removing that as well. The adhan that was being played in those masjids, either their volumes have been reduced or completely turned off. The imams that were in those Kashmiri imams have been replaced by imams sponsored by the state, not by the community, but by the state. There is your war on Islam. The fact that masjids are now being turned into mandirs or are being demolished, there is your war on Islam. The fact that children that were learning history and Islamic history and going to masjid to learn Quran, that is being trampled upon or being banned or being limited. There is your war on Islam.
Is that particularly just in Kashmir, or is that all over India?
It started in Kashmir, it's being exported to India. It's started over the last few years now. Now, the difference is that you may have heard about it more on mainstream media or through alternative media, social media, about what the Muslims inside India are facing. It's because there is a huge population. There are more Muslims in India than there are in Pakistan. There are nearly more than 300 Muslims in India, and there aren't that many Muslims in Pakistan. So information can come out. When it comes to Kashmir, we have been suppressed and suffocated for so long and so hard that information very rarely drips out. It just comes out in bits and pieces and to very few people. That is why most people will not understand or hear that whatever has happened or is happening to the Indian Muslims in India, the laboratory experiment was Kashmir.
So the idea of Azad Kashmir, but then why
the
not just
liberated part with Pakistan?
Yeah, so why don't I just be Pakistan and Kashmir? Why just call it like free Kashmir rather than just, because that was the initial exodus of Muslims to Pakistan, right? They went to practice their religion in freedom or have their own autonomy in terms of rules and regulations, and they went to Pakistan. Is that, because obviously, it gets tricky when you have Hindu, Sikhs, or any other religion living in one place, and now that's divided, bordered up by Britain. You go here, you go there. Was that the case with Kashmir, or is that how you, as a Kashmiri, feel as though,
No, Kashmir had a special status. Kashmir was not part of the way that Hindustan was during the British Raj. It had a special status. We had a prince, whether he was good or bad, but he was the Maharaja. We were given the option to accede to either India or Pakistan, as many other princely states were given. But then India decided to attack and absorb Kashmir, occupy Kashmir, because they said the Maharaja is Hindu, therefore the land is Hindu, irrespective that the majority of the population was Muslim. But on the flip side, in Junagadh, the ruler was Hindu, the ruler was Muslim, and the subjects were Hindu. And the Indian state said, well, we're going to go with what the people want, not what the ruler wants, because it was a war on Islam from that time.
Right.
They've always been against Muslims. It
So
didn't
double
matter
standards in all angles.
Exactly. Junagadh, Hyderabad, and Kashmir are the prime examples. That irrespective of who the leader was, or irrespective of who the what the population were in terms of their religion, the Indian state or the Indian government of the day said, we're going to go with whoever is a Hindu. It has to be all Hindu. Otherwise, naturally, Junagadh was supposed to also go to Pakistan, and Kashmir was supposed to go to Pakistan. I mean, we're talking about history right here. But as of today, give the people the right to decide. And the people will decide whatever is in their interest to protect their Muslim identity.
So tell me about this exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. So that's one of the criticism I've heard from some of my Indian family members or Hindu family members, and they've kind of criticized the Kashmiris for persecuting Hindus in Kashmir. Is that true?
For centuries, if not more, Hindus in Kashmir, the Hindu Pandits in Kashmir were minority, and yet they were the ruling class. And the Muslims were peasants. They were suppressed. They were never given education. They were, under the foot of the regime. Pandits were always the upper class. They were the elites. They had power. They were educated. And then, of course, the uprising against 1931 against the Maharaja at the time, because of his the acts that he was committing against Muslims, the repression against Muslims at the time. Pandits were still there. Pandits were there all the way up till 1989, until the Jagmohan, who was the governor of Kashmir, bundled them up in the middle of the night on buses and told them to leave. We didn't do that. Now, they'll claim that there was a genocide, the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. 89 people were killed. Tragically, 89 people were killed.
Is it the true figure? 100,000 Kashmiri Pandits left.
Show me the figures. If they did, who was the one? Who was the one that pulled them out? Who was the one that arranged the buses overnight? Who was the one that gave them the direction? It wasn't us. We didn't do it. Muslims didn't do it. It was Jagmohan, who was the governor of Kashmir at the time. In his book, read the books, read history. WhatsApp universities and what my uncle and what my banja and what my next door neighbor said doesn't count. Historical accuracy is important in these things. And what's the problem is that there is a lot of this is word of mouth. And what do they say? That if you lie enough, repeatedly, it starts sounding like the truth. And by the time the lie has traveled halfway across the world, the truth has only got its socks on. It's barely got its socks on. So we need to be able to count all of this. And there's evidence. For everything, give me the evidence. Where is the evidence? They talk about the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits. Do people understand what a genocide actually means? Are they equating that to what's happening with the Palestinians or what happened to the Kashmiris? If we talk about a genocide, let's talk about 1947, 1948. Let's talk about the Jammu genocide, where 250,000 people were killed, and some estimates are more. And that's not me saying that. That's a British newspaper that said it. 250,000 people killed in a matter of days. The Jammu genocide was 89 people, regrettably, that were killed. But nobody seems to talk about what happened with the Muslims.
Right. Well, so, in the current climate, so what's happened in, I think, is it called Fulgham Park? I'm not sure. Fulgham Park, right? What happened there exactly? Because, there's a bit of confusion from my side. I found, like, they say the Pakistanis were behind it. Some say no, it was Kashmiri locals. Some say it's false flag operations. What's going on? As a Kashmiri, how do you see the situation?
Irrespective of what happened, Kashmiris have been warning about such an event could take place because of the repression that India has committed on the people of Kashmir. Whether it's a false flag or whether it isn't, the real question is, how does India fare in all of this? Who gets to benefit from all of this the most? India have decided to shut off water, so therefore it benefits India. Pakistan looks bad in the international world, particularly with United States, the UK, Europe, with the IMF. That serves India's interests. To create more funding for the military, it serves India's interests. Elections are coming, it serves India's interests. It could be a false flag operation. Very likely it could be. But at the same time, let us also not diminish the fact that there is resistance happening inside Indian occupied Kashmir against Indian occupational forces, against repression, against occupation, against colonization, against imperialism, against the war on Islam. There is a genuine armed resistance happening. Let us not delegitimize it in that way. Anything that happens to civilians is absolutely regrettable, condemnable. Beshak, without doubt. However, let us not take away from the core issue. In the same way that October 7th wasn't the beginning of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, in the same way what happened 3 days ago is not the beginning of this conflict or the war between India and Pakistan, where Kashmiris are the ones that are going to, in the end, suffer.
I think it's very important as Muslims to sometimes inform other religious communities that what our principles are. So I think, you know, sometimes the already added narrative from the Hindus, like Muslims are barbaric, they kill and rape women and right, yada yada yada, right? And in the light of what's happened, I mean, as from what I've studied Islam, it is haram to kill innocent civilians. So absolutely. I don't know what kind of quote unquote mujahideen would do that. We
absolutely.
don't know. So for us as Muslim, my conscience is clear. If someone asks me, is that what Islam believes? No, it's clear cut to me. Just like I don't eat pork, we don't kill civilians.
Exactly.
Right?
And in the same way, let's also remember that what happened in 1996, I think it was, Chatti Singhpura was a village in Kashmir, mostly Sikh populated, and there were killings there. And India claimed that it was Kashmiri Mujahideen that had committed it. In a book written by, I think it was Madeleine Albright, she says that when Bill Clinton was the president of the US at the time, when he visited India, eventually he was the one that reported that it wasn't Kashmiris that had did it. Indians had started, it was what we call a fake encounter. So a false flag operation to demonize Muslims, to demonize Kashmir, to demonize the resistance movement. So it's not unheard of that India performs these actions themselves. Al-Faran was also another so-called Mujahideen organization in the 1990s. Also turned out that it was set up by India to demonize Kashmiris. So it's not the first time or the second time or the third time. India repeatedly have committed such false flags in their own country as well as inside Kashmir.
And I think information like this is not in the public eye. Nor do the average Hindu or Indian understands these things or recognize it. For them, they only believe in what the government is pushing them to. So they see movies like, you know, Padmavati and Bahubali and all these things, and they just perceive, you know, the Bollywood narrative of Muslims. Oh yeah,
exactly.
Oppressive, barbaric, blood hungry.
And if you look at the films that are coming out, not that I watch them, but obviously I have to keep up to date with the information. If you look at the films that are coming out, notice that they're not all about romance anymore. It's all about war against so-called terrorists, and all of these terrorists turn out to be Muslims for some reason. So they're plying the minds of their own public as well as the international world, because they know that Indian Bollywood sells a lot. It's very popular in the Middle East. It's extremely popular in the Middle East. They dub it. So they know how to change that narrative and how to change the minds around the world. And that's what Bollywood is there for. So you're right that people don't know about this, which is why I'm so appreciative to you and the platform for hosting us and allowing us to actually tell you what the reality is, what the truth is, because often what happens is we get lost in the chaos.
This might be a personal question to start to you, that, you know, as a young Kashmiri man or your family, were there any sort of things that you or your family went through that, you know, kind of brings things to more into light and that actually gives us more of a true understanding of what the situation in Kashmir is like?
A couple of years ago, I was in the United Nations, and I made a statement in the council. I called for the heads of or various different Indian politicians like Modi and Amit Shah and various senior politicians. I called for the United Nations to classify them as war criminals. A few days later, my uncle was assassinated inside Kashmir. I did a lecture in London, maybe 6 months ago, 4, 5, 6 months ago. Once I went outside, I was attacked on the streets by 3 Hindutva goons, gunde, gangster thugs. In London, on the streets of London in Euston. I can't tell you what I did back because I don't want to incriminate myself, but they attacked me. My cousins languish in jail because they dared to contact me on WhatsApp. Nobody from my family speaks to me anymore because everything is monitored. Anything that happens, anything that I do inside the UN or inside the British Parliament or anywhere that I do it, my family inside Kashmir suffers. That's just one person. Imagine all the people that are working. Many of the Kashmiris that are people from Indian occupied Kashmir that live in the United Kingdom or the US, they don't speak about Kashmir because they don't want to risk their family members' lives. I can't travel back to Kashmir. I've been banned, charged with certain laws. so I can't go back. My father, we couldn't bury him inside Kashmir. We wanted to bury him in his ancestral land. They wouldn't allow that. The repression is real. They really, when they come after you, they come after everybody. It's like the mafia. They don't just come after you. They come after your family. They come after your neighbor. They come after your neighbor's neighbors. It's exactly what they do. But alhamdulillah, this is part of the struggle. We don't weep. We don't mourn. We just carry on.
So thank you for sharing that. I think it's comments or stories like that when they are put out there, maybe from maybe a clever or a balanced Hindu mind will understand your plight here. I've got many family members who are Hindus. I've spoken to them. We have had discussions about these things. I've got Christian family members, and a lot of the time I find it's just misinformation, and that's the painted picture of Muslims that the majority of the world may have. The media is not kind to us, and they hide us on that very purpose that people like me become Muslim when you find out the truth.
May they find the same hidayah that you found.
Ameen, Ustad. And that's very important. And I think it's people like yourself in the conversation or the exposure to you may change people's minds. And what's your advice to Muslims, non-Muslims, on the topic of Hindutva, Zionism, Muslims, oppression, freedom?
Read. I can't say anything more than whatever Allah has prescribed to us. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of your Lord. Read for the sake of Muslims. Read for the sake of your brethren. Read for the sake of protecting your identities and our identities. Read, because if you don't, we're going to suffer. The responsibility of Muslim blood is on all of us, not just one of us. Just because I'm Kashmiri doesn't make it my responsibility. It makes it all of our collective responsibility. We stood for the Rohingya, we stood for the Uyghurs, we stood for Palestine, we stood for Iraq, we stood for Yemen, we stood for Afghanistan. I ask you to stand for Kashmir as well. Read about Kashmir. Do the same activities that you do for other causes, do that for Kashmir. I'm not asking for an out-of-the-box solution. I don't expect people to do more than what they can. But I expect people to recognize their competencies and fulfill their obligation towards their fellow Muslims in Kashmir.
SubhanAllah, that's extremely important. As a convert to Islam, I can understand the importance of reading, why Iqra is revealed to us, because without reading, what are we?
We're nothing.
We're nothing. I mean, civilization is made on reading, right? And I'm appreciative of the people like yourself who come to the podcast, who come to raise awareness, besides all the things that's happening in the background, all the backlashes that you may face for it. And we are thankful for that. And inshallah, if you want to learn more about this topic, and learn more about yourself or things that you are talking about, where can we find you?
I'm on social media. I have Twitter, which is now X, Facebook as well, I guess. We're in the process. The problem is that a lot of our social media gets banned pretty regularly, or it gets shadow banned, or it gets taken down, or we get the Indian government take some kind of charges against us. So we have to keep on reinventing ourselves. Inshallah, we're in the process of establishing a dedicated website, which will serve as a resource of literature, of knowledge and activities that can be done in the name of Kashmir, in the name of protecting Muslim identity.
Or documentaries you would recommend us to watch?
Victoria Schofield is a celebrated author. She is an authority on Kashmir history. Victoria Schofield. Alistair Lamb. He's also written several books on Kashmir. Birth of a Tragedy is one of them. There are some modern books. Azad Isa. He's written a book on the relationship between Hindutva and Zionism. There are several. There is a list. Maybe I'll send that to you, and you can put it into the description, and people can try and find that literature. Inshallah, we'll also try to provide a lot of free literature as well on the website, so people can download it or read it in their free time, and hopefully we can work together to liberate the Muslims everywhere.
And I'll ask you my last point. Let's say there's a Hindutva young man watching this video. What advice would you give him?
Look into yourself. Look, genuinely believe, irrespective of nationalism and identity and religion. Do you believe genuinely that what is happening to the people of Kashmir over the last 70 years is legitimate? Do you believe that it is right, it is just? But Sunil, the problem is that when you ask the same question to them in the context of Palestine, they'll say, yes, they do deserve it. We stand with Israel. And that's where it becomes a problem. That if a person that is Hindutva is not rational. A person that believes in Hindutva is not rational. But a person that is Hindu, that is a nationalist, that's different. A person that is a left-wing Hindu is different. But a person that believes that we need to have a land of the Hindus, we must eliminate all the Muslims and all the minorities, they are irrational people, and they cannot be reasoned with, which is why that sometimes they need to be taught lessons in a language that they understand.
SubhanAllah. Ustad, thank you for your time.
Jazakallah
and we
khair
hope
for
to have you
hosting.
in the podcast again.
Inshallah.
Do stay in touch.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm just going to end the stream now, Ustad.